The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
The following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
By tomorrow, I will rule the world!
You think he's gone? He's not gone. That's the whole point. He's never gone!
Is this some radical new therapy?
You see?
Well, I must have not been paying attention when you were just talking to me. Do you think that you could repeat the question? And I listen more attentively. There must have been something in all of that nothing that wasn't quite so easy.
All right, quiet on the set. All righty. Hi, how you guys doing? Tom Duggan here at the Paying Attention Podcast. Hi atop Two Guys Smoke Shop at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. And we have a bunch of things to get to today. Bunch of breaking news. So we're going to talk about some breaking news. And then in the second half of the show, we've got Steve Costa is going to come in from the Haverhill Firefighters. And he's going to talk about how the mayor of Haverhill is screwing the firefighters. And anytime somebody wants to talk about the mayor of Haverhill, Ed, I'm in.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I'm in. You know, anytime you want to talk about Jim Ferrantini, because I'm schizophrenic when it comes to Jim Ferrantini. When you meet him and you talk to him, he seems so nice, and you want to like him. Right. And then you look at some of the stupid shit that he does, and you want to kill him.
So it's the actions.
Well, right, yeah. And then you meet him and you want to go. Like I give him a really hard time. Like he runs when he sees me because he knows I'm going to break his balls every time I see him. Right, and so like you go over and you ask him a question. He's the typical old school politician. You go over and you ask him a question, he can never fucking answer a question. Never. He will never answer a question. Went over to him one day and I said, hey, Jim, I'm hearing you might not run for re-election. And his answer was, well, you know, there's some, some good points on the side of not running, and there's some good points on the side of running, and we're going to take a hard look at that. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, you sound like fucking Elizabeth Warren. You're going to study it. You're going to look at it. You're going to think about it. How about, Jim, what day is it? Well, in China it could be Thursday because they're across the prime meridian, but in the United States it could be Wednesday. Just fucking answer the question. Please, for the love of God, just answer the goddamn question. And now we're starting to see with the new people coming into Methuen, during the election, you ask them any question. Any question, didn't matter, they would answer it, right? Because they wanted to get elected. Now that they're elected, you ask a question, it's very hard to get them to answer a question now. They've all learned now you don't answer anything, because for some reason they think that if they say something and then they change their mind, like everything they say is supposed to be etched in stone. Right. Like someone's going to hold it against them and go, yeah, but 3 days ago you said this. And this is what's wrong with politics, by the way, is that nobody can say, yeah, you know what? As it stands right now, I would probably support impeaching, say, the President of the United States. And then 3 days later, they learn something else and go, no, now I'm against it.
Well, now you're a flip-flopper.
Oh, you're a flip-flopper, you're a bad guy. And this is what's wrong with politics. Say what you really think, and then it's okay later on if you say something different because things change.
Yeah.
I've changed my position on the death penalty in my lifetime probably about 8 times, right?
Yeah.
I changed. When I ran for school committee in Lawrence, I campaigned against full-day kindergarten. Then I got in. And in one of my first votes, I voted for full-day kindergarten. And the difference was, when I was running, I had an idea in my head on what full-day kindergarten was and how it would impact the community. Right. Then I got in. And a couple of weeks after getting in, I met with a whole bunch of parents from the Bilingual Parent Advisory Council. And they came in, and they made a really good case.
Yep.
And I said, you know what? They're paying taxes. They're residents. I'm here to represent them. I'm not here to represent my own view. And that night, everybody was expecting me to vote no, and I voted yes. You're a flip-flopper. You're horrible. You know what? Screw you. I mean, seriously, we're not here to just take a position and always, for the rest of our lives, have that position, ever.
I guess that's the point. As an elected official, are you there to represent the people who elected you or yourself?
Right, and that's exactly right. And so I have some very strong views on some things, but if I was a state representative here in Salem, New Hampshire, and I had to vote on it for the people of Salem, New Hampshire, I might vote a little differently than where I really feel, because I know the people of Salem, New Hampshire feel differently than I do when I'm here to represent them. That's one of the reasons why Diana DeZoglio was such an amazing elected official as a state senator. Because you ask her a question, and God damn it, she answers it. Like, she just answers it, and it's so refreshing. You say, well, what do you think of full-day kindergarten? Well, I think this, but that could change if somebody wants to change my mind.
Yep.
And so nobody's ever going to hold it anything or say, you flip-flopped, you lied to us. So anyways, Steve Costa is going to come on the second part of the show, and he's going to talk about Jim Ferrantini and some of the shenanigans going on with the firefighters. And I love firefighters. I love fire, even though, no offense to the guy who's here, even though I have to say that there's a large number of firefighters that are smarmy little bitches. All right? They sit around the firehouse all day, and they complain, and they bitch, and they moan, and they spread rumors, because they got nothing to do all day, right?
Yep.
But at the end of the day, when that call comes in, they're rushing into that building, and they're putting their lives on the line, and they're not thinking twice. I mean, during the Columbia gas explosion, I watched Lawrence and Waltham and Worcester firefighters running into Lawrence buildings while they were exploding. Like, while they're exploding, these guys are still going. And during the explosion, they're still moving forward. They're still moving into the building. So whatever you think of the Haverhill firefighters, Lawrence firefighters, whatever you think of firefighters in general, at the end of the day, they're heroes. So we'll have him on. We do have some news to talk about. There was a murder, Ed, in Lawrence yesterday. First murder of the year. A Lawrence DPW worker is filling a pothole on Andover and Clifton Street at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he was shot dead.
Wow.
They still don't have the suspect in custody. 2 in the afternoon. There were police officers all over that neighborhood, by the way, because they're doing all kinds of construction. They're replacing pipes because of Columbia gas stuff. And I can't talk about this story without making it about me. Not because I can't talk about anything without making it about me, but I've been thinking about this for the last 24 hours, right? It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They encrypted their police scanner because Tom Duggan was making Lawrence look bad, right? I was driving around, I was following cops, I was going to scenes of shootings and stabbings, and the mayor, who's a little sissy, wanted to make sure that Tom Duggan doesn't make Lawrence look bad anymore, so they encrypted the scanner so I can't follow the police around, right?
Yep.
So then I have police officer friends of mine would text me when something big would happen, and all of a sudden they're getting called into the chief's office or the deputy chief's office, and they're trying to find out who's the leak, and they're giving friends of mine in the department a hard time. Even if they're not the ones that did it, they're automatically like, there are guys like Mike Samada always going to be suspected first, right? So, putting all that into context with this murder yesterday, it's not Tom Duggan following the cops and reporting crime that makes Lawrence look bad. It's not Tom Duggan getting a tip from a cop that there's a shooting on Brook Street that makes Lawrence look bad. It's the fact that a fucking DPW worker can't fill a pothole at 2 in the afternoon without getting shot dead that makes Lawrence look bad. That's what makes Lawrence look bad. Newsflash for all the little snowflakes that came on my page on Twitter this week telling me how I'm making Lawrence look bad. Newsflash. It's the fact that I'm going to say it again, a DPW worker can't fill a pothole on Andover and Clifton Street at 2 in the afternoon without getting shot dead. That's what makes Lawrence look bad.
And, the reality is, whether you reported on it or not, it is happening.
Right. And then I get these snowflakes came on my page saying, what about the family? You should take this down. The family shouldn't have to see this. And I'm like, wait a minute. Channel 5 is live from the scene, but I'm supposed to take my thing down? Like, because you know me, because I'm local, you think you can intimidate me to take a story down. And whenever they say it's for the family shouldn't have to see this. There was a big accident on Pelham Street where a kid died 5 or 6 months ago, and I got inundated on Facebook. The family, you should take down those pictures. The family. Translation, whenever they say the family, here's what they're really saying. You're making Lawrence look bad. Please take it down. You're making us look bad. It's about them. It's not about the family. They couldn't give two shits about the family. You think they care about the family? They don't care about the family. And by the way, those who come on and say, what if it was your family member? What if it was somebody you loved? Here's another news flash for you. It was. My father was murdered. A guy put a baseball bat to his head a dozen times at 3 in the afternoon, a block from the police station in 1990. And you know how I found out? Jerry D'Amico on Channel 7. That's how I found out. I flipped on TV, and there's a picture of my father, and they're talking about how he's fighting for his life at Lawrence General. That's how I found out. But you know what I didn't do, Ed?
What?
I didn't call Channel 7 and say, I'm the family. How could you make me learn it that way? I had to see my father, and it was so traumatic. I didn't blame Channel 7. They've got a job to do. And they have to do their job. And when a cop gets beaten with a baseball bat in the middle of the afternoon in Lawrence, that's news. You can't hold it against them. And when a DPW worker gets shot filling a pothole at 2 in the afternoon, shot dead,
right,
that's news. And so I don't know what the Lawrence Public Schools is teaching these kids today. I almost don't blame them. I blame Lawrence High School. I blame the Lawrence schools. I don't know what they're teaching them about a free press. I don't know what they're teaching them about the press in general. But every single person that comes on, whenever there's a death, a tragedy, a car accident, a shooting, it's always take it down for the family. This is terrible. This isn't news. You're making Lawrence look bad. And it's like, you know what? How about you live life a little bit first?
Yep.
Go out into the real world, pay taxes, get a real job, and then come tell me how to do mine. Because I don't show up at these people's jobs and go, hey, you're making that sub the wrong way.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't stand over them going, hey, how come you're not making that hamburger faster? So anyways, that's Lawrence. They have no suspect as far as I know. There was a rumor last night that he was in custody at Lawrence General. That turned out not to be true. And thank God I didn't post that because I didn't confirm it. But we heard the rumor. We saw it on Facebook. I made some phone calls. The chief told me, nope, that's not true. He's not in custody. I take him at his word. So as far as we know, as of right now, the guy who shot a DPW worker in Lawrence and killed him yesterday is still at large. And the theory is, at least as of right now, the theory is that it was a gang initiation. But they weren't targeting this guy particularly.
Right.
But there was a gang initiation. You got to go out and you got to shoot somebody. And someone went out and shot this guy. They just happened to see him filling a pothole and they shot him. But that's what makes Lawrence look bad. And by the way, my mom does this all the time, and I love my mom to death, right? But anytime someone badmouths Lawrence about the crime, she's like, well, where else are you going to go where there's no crime? And I'm like, the goal is not no crime. You're never going to go anywhere there's no crime. But I can tell you, since I moved to North Andover 18 years ago, I don't have to worry about my car getting broken into. I don't have to worry about gunshots outside. I don't have to worry about sirens every 15 minutes going by. I don't have to listen to drunks fighting outside my office. You don't have the environment, and even in most sections of Methuen, you don't have the environment you have in Lawrence. So anyways, we're hoping that we'll get some breaking news, maybe even during the show that they've got him. But this is the first murder of 2020 for the city of Lawrence. According to the chief, 3 murders last year. I think they got one guy. I think they got one. Now, the year before, there were 4 or 5 murders. Have not solved any of those murders. The year before that, there were 9. I don't think they've solved any of those either. Now, that's not an indictment on the Lawrence police and the Lawrence detectives. They do a great job. But it does mean that something else has to happen.
Yep.
There needs to be some kind of priority by the state to come into Lawrence with even more, and I hate to say even more because Lawrence is inundated with state and federal agencies right now. But they've got to have some kind of a murder task force to come into Lawrence, start clearing up all these old unsolved murders, because then the word spreads among the gangbangers.
Yeah,
that if you're going to kill somebody,
if you feel like you're going to get away with it, it's a lot more tempting.
Yeah, you scratch somebody's car walking down North Andover on Main Street, and it's a crime spree, and 15 cops are knocking on your door. Right in Lawrence, not so much, I guess. So, anyways, that's the Lawrence stuff.
When my mailbox was damaged in Carlisle, I got a very quick response.
Oh, yeah, that's a crime spree in Carlisle. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
They had the feds there in 5 minutes. We also have some news out of Methuen. So we didn't talk about it last week. We had Mayor Perry on the show, and Jim McCarty, Methuen City Council, was elected council president. Now, here's the fun thing about this. Like, I lobbied very hardly against Jim McCarty becoming council president. He got it anyway, which goes to show you, that people crying about my involvement doesn't really make all that much difference at the end of the day, does it? But he became council president, and he wanted it on the front page of the paper. He asked me, "Are you going to put this in your paper?" And I'm like, "Well, your vote is the day after we come out.
Right.
But if you're sure you've got the votes, I'll make like a notebook item that you got the votes and that you're council president," because he was sure 100% he had the votes the night before. So I was in the process of writing up a notebook item, and I look on Facebook, and there's Jim McCarty on Facebook trashing me, saying, "Oh yeah, he's just giving me a little notebook item. I should get the front page." He's telling me he thinks that him being council president is so fucking important that should be on the front page.
Right.
And he says to me the day before, "What's on the front page?" I said, the 4 police chiefs talking about the opioid crisis. Well, shouldn't it be me? No. I'm pretty sure the opioid crisis takes precedent over some kid in Methuen becoming council president. I do cover 49 cities and towns, by the way. It's not just Methuen that I'm covering. If I was a Methuen-only weekly paper, maybe that could be a front-page story for a weekly. But no. Also in Methuen, he didn't say it while he was here last week. which really makes me mad because I have a feeling he was. I have a feeling he knew he was going to do it. I actually even recommended that he do it, but he didn't do it until this week, and that is he fired former Lawrence DPW director Frank McCann, who was a consultant. He was acting operations director for the DPW in Methuen. So Frank is out. They've posted the position for DPW director. Mayor Perry's got a huge task ahead of him. Yeah. Where he has a lot of jobs to fill. Remember when Trump came in and he had like 137 judges to appoint? Right. And nobody could figure out why. Like, why would Obama do that? Well, because he obviously thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. I have a feeling that Jajuga really, really believed that Jen Kinnan was going to win because he left all of these unopened positions. Yeah. And one DPW director, city engineer. I mean, there's all kinds of positions that are open. So anybody that's interested in working for the city known as the town of Methuen, get your butts down to City Hall and apply for some of these jobs. The DPW jobs are opening up. He's cleaning house over there.
So a lot of acting positions over there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who are going, and there's a lot of people who are going to be replaced. And I think that's a good thing. I think when you get a new administration, you got to clean house a little bit. You got to clear the dead wood, especially whereas we had for the last 2 years, we had Mayor Jajuga, who literally mailed it in. Like literally mailed it in. He was almost never there. He was almost never in his house. I have no idea where he was staying for the 2 years, but he was. My friend Mark lives like right down the street from him. He said that house was always empty, always for the 2 years he was mayor. Oddly enough, now he's there every day. I hear. Oh, really? Like now that he's left the mayor's office, now he's moved back into Methuen. I'm not exactly. I don't even know how to interpret that. I mean, it snaps my brain. What else do we have? There's a new thing, and I debated among myself. Which are always the best debates.
Do you usually win?
Yeah, never. I never win. No, I never win against myself. I debated about talking about this topic because I don't want to give them any more publicity than they're already getting. But on the other hand, there's stuff that's being said that needs to be addressed. So let me clear all this up because you have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm talking vaguely. So there's a new website that is... it's an anonymous website covering Methuen politics. And it's kind of like Sound Off on the internet, where they just make stuff up. Yep. And sometimes not making it up. Sometimes it's stuff that's real. But you got to figure out what's real and what's not real because it's just they just throw stuff out there.
That's fun.
It's like rumor has it that I'll just make up a thing. Yeah. Rumor has it Mayor Perry is sleeping with the secretary at the Veteran Services Department or something. Like
somebody's going to cut that out.
Right. So I'm not going to say the name of the site, but everybody's looking at it.
So it's active.
It's active, and everybody's shopping it around. Jim McCarty, by the way, is sharing it all over Facebook, so you know he has something to do with it. And I suspect, and everybody's running around trying, this is the thing, everyone is trying to run around to figure out who is behind this website. And I want to caution everybody watching, stop doing that. Stop trying to figure out who did it. That plays right into what they want. Because while you're running around talking to people, trying to figure out who it is, you're spreading the word. You're spreading the word about their website. Yep. You're talking about it. You're naming it. And then people are going home and looking it up. And then they're sending it to their friend going, who do you think this is? Do you think it could be Sid Harris? Do you think it's Tim Wood? I'm pretty sure it's actually, by the way, Tim Harris and Sid Wood with Bob LeBlanc and McCarty kind of thrown in helping out with Steve. It's definitely part of the Staber clan. They've attacked me a couple of times. And the verbiage used to attack me is almost word for word what guys like Bob LeBlanc and Steve Saber say about me behind my back. So I'm pretty sure that's who it is, but who cares? At the end of the day, we're probably never going to find out who it was. Stop trying to figure out who it is. Who is doing it is not important, as far as I'm concerned. What's important is what they're saying true or not. Right. Now, there was an item on that site yesterday or the day before that Mayor Neil Perry is going to try and take city money to revamp the awnings over on Union Street where the railroad, it used to be like a railroad stop. Yeah. They get these awnings. And there was a huge controversy over whether the city should tear it down, what they should do with it. And because Sharon Pollard, because she's Darth Vader, you know, because Sharon Pollard wanted to preserve it for historical reasons, the people with Sharon Pollard derangement syndrome
They want to tear it down.
Flipped out and went, we're not using any money. We don't care what happens. We don't care if it falls on children and they die. If Sharon Pollard wants it, we're against it. We don't care what it is. So this item on that stupid site said that Neil Perry, now that he's mayor, is going to be using city money to try and tear down this thing or revamp this thing, whatever it is. So I ran into Neil Perry last night at the TMF family dinner for the homeless. And by the way, thank him for coming because the mayor of Lawrence doesn't even show up. And I said, hey, listen, I read that Methuen site about the awning and Mike Gagliardi and the whole thing. He said, yeah, you know what's funny? I've never even talked to anybody about it. He said, I haven't called anybody and asked a question about it. I haven't called anybody in my office and said, what do you think of this? He said, not only is it not on my radar screen at the moment, I've never even talked to anybody about this.
And I don't imagine awnings are at the highest priority level.
But when you're a hater, it's kind of like the whole thing with Donald Trump. If you hate him and he walks across the street without using the crosswalk, it's an impeachable offense. It's a death penalty offense because they hate him. And so when you hate someone, I was telling Mike Samad this last night because he hates Joe Solomon. And he's crying about, look at how many cars they have in the police department. I'm like, there's $4 million missing out of the school department, and you're bitching about the gas they're using and having a Tahoe. Do you realize that your hatred for Joe Solomon has made you completely overlook $4 million missing out of the school department, and you're talking about $30 in gas for the week? This is the problem. Can we remove the emotion, kids? If you're in Methuen, especially, can we remove the emotion? Stop voting against things because of who proposed it. Stop voting against things because of who endorsed it. Stop voting for things because of who endorsed it. Look at each measure that comes to you based on what's good for the city. And you know what? If Sharon Pollard likes it and you hate Sharon Pollard, but it's good for the city, how about side with the city? How about do that? Yeah. Do that. Just side with the city of Methuen. What else do we have? We did Frank McCann. Oh, TMF last night. So TMF, the movement family, they do family dinner for the homeless in Methuen. I'm sorry, in Lawrence. I got Methuen in the brain now.
Yeah.
And every Wednesday night, we feed homeless people over at 2 South Broadway. It's on the south side of the Falls Bridge. Last night, John Zimini, a former selectman in Drake-it, who has his own TV show, asked me to come on his show a couple months ago, showed up. He's also the coach of the St. John's Prep hockey team, freshman hockey team. So he showed up with his St. John's Prep freshman hockey team last night to feed the homeless. And it was great because you had all these rich white kids. And I don't know what St. John's is, like $30,000 a year to go, something like that. It's just outrageous, right? So you had all these rich white kids coming into Lawrence, helping to feed homeless people who are addicted to heroin, most of them, who have severe mental health issues, who have severe issues in general, come in and interact with these people, feed them. The kids not only set up the tables and served food, but then they sat down with these people and talked to them. And every once in a while, I looked over at one of the hockey players sitting down with, and I won't mention names, but a couple of the addicts that we know really, really well. And I could hear the conversation. And you could see, I'd never seen a white kid get more pale. But these kids were getting pale while they were listening to these addicts talking about their life on the street. Because it's so much worse than what you think when you see it on TV. Like what these people live through, living on the streets of Lawrence, no less. Right? I mean, living on the streets anywhere is bad because of the conditions, the weather. But in Lawrence, no less, with the crime and the drugs and the all the things that go on in the city of Lawrence. And I thought it was a good teachable moment. And when they left, the coach came over and said, and I thank John Zimini for doing this. He came over and said, listen, a lot of these kids sat down with these homeless addicts, and they got an education that's going to carry them through a lifetime because they may never do this again. They may never see this one
At least
ever
there's
again.
an awareness at this point now.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I wanted them to come away with, I wish I could have given them a talk beforehand or afterwards. One of the things I want them to come away with is just because you're rich and just because you're white and just because you live in Groveland or Georgetown, wherever you live, and you don't have a lot of the crime and you don't see this could and will be you if you decide to use opiates. It's going, there's no maybe, there's no it could be. Yep. This will be you. And someday, 5 years from now, we're going to be under the bridge feeding people, and one of those kids that were there last night is going to be, I was one of the St. John's Prep hockey kids, and now I'm here. And you can just see it happening because just statistically speaking, and we hope that doesn't happen, but we know statistically it's probably going to. And so I really hope that what they come away with, what they saw last night, was that this will be you. I mean, there's no question about it. You start using opiates, you start abusing opiates. Marijuana is one thing, some of these other drugs.
Right.
But if you start using opiates, if you start using Percocet, Percodan recreationally, if you start using heroin in any way, shape, or form, even once, you're in big trouble. And you're on a path now where we're going to be feeding you under the bridge at some point. So I hope they come away with that. What else do we have? Methuen, Lawrence, North. We have one more Lawrence story, Ed. I could do 3 more stories, but I want to get Steve Foster up here. Illegal alien living in Lawrence sentenced for possession of fentanyl with intent to distribute. So I get these email blasts from the Department of Justice every day. And every day, I'm posting a new story about an illegal alien in Lawrence being convicted or charged with fentanyl or identity theft. We've got about 8. If you go to valleypatriot.com, we've got 8 stories up right now about people from Lawrence committing identity theft or selling fentanyl, using drugs. And, I have all these people. Why are you making Lawrence look bad? Listen, I didn't make them go out and sell fentanyl.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't make them get caught selling fentanyl.
Now, what happens in that case? Do they just deport? They have a trial? With an illegal, what's the process?
They'll charge them. They'll make them serve their sentence. And if they fit the requirement to be deported, at the end of the sentence, they will.
So you still got your sentence before you go.
So those of you who are interested, you should go to the Department of Justice and sign up for their email blasts, because and tell them like what area you're in, like Massachusetts, so it'll be all local stuff for you. But you need to understand the code, right? Because after 8 years of Obama, Trump still has a ways to go to straightening some of this stuff out at DOJ. So their headline was Dominican national living in Lawrence sentenced for possession of fentanyl. So they didn't say illegal alien.
Right.
And most people don't know what Dominican national. They don't know what that means. So I always call a friend of mine at the DOJ and say, I just want to make sure on this particular case that we're right. This guy's illegal, right? They're like, yeah, he's totally illegal. So that's what I put in the headline. Because people need to because the regular news will always candy coat anything involving an illegal alien. They don't ever want to make illegal aliens look bad because, as CNN tells us every day, every single illegal alien that comes here is a valedictorian. Really? Every single one of them that comes here, every illegal alien in this country just wants a better life for themselves and their family.
Awesome.
No such thing as gangs or drug runners, gun runners, people, kidnapping, sexual molestation, child pornography. None of that exists if they're illegal aliens. Every single one of them are Mother Teresa. And so I want to make sure as a member of the media, sadly enough, a once proud profession but no more, I always make sure that I put inside my headline that they're an illegal alien. And I get some good feedback on it, so I'm going to continue doing that. Do we have like a 30-second commercial to bounce out of, or should I just bring him up? I can just bring him up. It doesn't really matter, I guess.
Well, why don't I play a commercial while you're bringing him up?
You got a quick one? That's just one?
I think we got... Perez was by itself, wasn't it?
Yeah, I will do that.
You loved that one.
I did. And yesterday I went live on my Facebook page to the Philippines, live to the volcano. The Taal volcano is erupting with Steve Johnson, who is a former Marine. He's definitely a U.S. service. And he retired down there, and he follows me on Facebook. He's from the Lawrence area. And I've got friends all over the world. I've got friends in Israel and Paris. And we tried it out, and it worked well. So from now on, a terrorist attack happens in Paris, we can go live to the scene if we've got somebody there. And we will. We have people all over. I've been networking for the last 6 months on Facebook trying to get people in and getting a list together of people and where they are.
Your news spotters are worldwide.
They're starting to go worldwide. And I think at that point, that's when we can start monetizing and start making some real money on this.
Oh, I like
it. I do this for free all the time because I love to do it. But why not make some money on it?
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be back after this on the Paying Attention Podcast. Hi, at Top 2 Guys Smoke Shop here at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. All right, as I get shot and killed, make sure you get my body to Perez Funeral Home because we do business with the people who do business with us. And he's on South Broadway where it's the old Scott Funeral Home. If you're an old-time Lawrence resident, it's the old Scott Funeral Home on South Broadway. Perez Funeral Home at 298 South Broadway in Lawrence. They do crematory services. They do all the stuff that they're supposed to do, right? And Mike's a big fan of the show. He followed us when we go live. He's an advertiser now in the print edition of the paper, and he's now sponsoring this program. Perez Funeral Home and Crematory Services, 298 South Broadway in Lawrence. We appreciate him. I guess that means we're back. Quiet on the set. It's pretty bad when I have to tell the owner to stop talking during a podcast. This might be my last one.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, he's not Colonel Sam, I'll tell you that right now. He's got my back no matter what. Welcome back to the Paying Attention Podcast, High Top Two Guys Smoke Shop here at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. We've been remiss. We haven't mentioned our sponsors. Right. We want to make sure that we get them all in. Nina at Climate Design Systems is back. We love Climate Design Systems. Marcoux Towing, Jason Marcoux helps us every Wednesday night with hot chocolate and coffee for the homeless. And if you need to have your car towed, you should call him. Marsan and Son Construction. I'm doing this from memory, though, so if I forget one, let me know. Marsan and Son Construction. Ronnie Marsan and his son own a construction business. If you need any, what you do is you call Ron Marsan to fix your roof, and you call Climate Design Systems to fix your heating, and you're all set.
Warm as could be.
You're all set with that. I'm trying to. Who else do we have? McLennan and Company, Century 21. We love McLennan and Company, and I love. I may have to marry Janet McLennan at some point.
That sounds good.
I might have to. I know it goes against my age restriction. I usually cut it off at 35, but I may have no choice because I love her so much. And then we have AFC Urgent Care. Instead of sitting at the Holy Family for 4 hours waiting to be seen, and by the way, you can't read the Valley Patriot at Holy Family anymore. They threw us out. They threw all the newspapers out.
Oh.
It was just too burdensome for them to pick up the papers after people left. It was way too they couldn't do it anymore. They had to throw everybody out. So you don't want to go sit there anyway. You've got nothing to read. Go to AFC Urgent Care either in Methuen or North Andover. And by the way, they love the Valley Patriot. You can get one in the waiting room while you're waiting.
Superior Officers.
The Methuen Superior. Thank you very much. The Methuen Superior Officers Union. We appreciate them sponsoring the program. Not just because we appreciate their check, we do appreciate that, but we also appreciate that because there's Superior Officers Union and they're so involved in all this conflict and controversy, it pisses a lot of people off that they're sponsoring this show. And those are the people, by the way, I like to piss off. When those people are pissed off at you, you know you're doing okay. Here in the studio today, we have, for the last half hour of the show, Steve Costa. And I've been saying Steve Foster, and I'm sorry.
It's all right,
Steve
Tommy.
Foster. Steve Costa, who wanted to come on and talk about, you are a firefighter, but you're here as a citizen, right?
Yeah.
And you're not representing the union. We want to make sure nobody gets sued, nobody accuses you of doing anything bad. But you've got a story to tell that they can't tell, so we're having you as proxy come on to talk about how the mayor of Haverhill is screwing the firefighters. Now, look, if you want to screw DPW workers, whatever. You want to screw the teachers, quite frankly, I think teachers get paid too much money anyway. If you want to screw the clerks union in City Hall, whatever. You want to screw cops and firefighters, you got a problem with me.
Yeah.
And these are people that we saw in 9/11, we saw during the Columbia gas situation. These are people who are running into burning buildings, who are running toward gunshots while the rest of us are cowardly running away. And so anytime, any mayor, any town manager is giving crap to any police department or fire department, I'm right here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring you on. Why don't you talk about what's going on in Haverhill? Oh, you don't mind my smoking, do you?
Absolutely.
I wouldn't stop anyway. I just wanted to know if you minded.
And Tom, thank you for letting me come on and talk about this. So roughly about in the summer of 2016, I got acquainted with union president at local 1011, Tim Carroll, and we got to talking. And it seemed at that point that they were at a stronghold with some things with the mayor that weren't working out too well contractually and basically adequate to the community itself. So at that point, we started talking, and we waited a bit. And then in the last year, all of a sudden, the union has basically taken on to the social media of letting the citizens know what's going on in the department publicly, although, that they supported his opponent in the last election, who, mind you, took 43% of the vote in this past election, which was pretty damaging to the mayor's...
He could have won that election.
If he campaigned better.
I called him and I said, I will endorse you, and I've got tons of friends and readers in Haverhill. I will endorse you, and I will help you win, but you've got to answer one question. And whether I endorse you is going to depend on the answer to your question. If you become mayor, will you unencrypt the police scanner? And he said, no. So I had to take a walk.
So you talk about the the various on that one is that, again, you earlier included, I don't want to get into too much about Lawrence. So it's funny because in Lawrence, all of a sudden the crime rate started dropping just dramatically, just a little bit when they encrypted. Mm-hmm. Now, we've had encryption in the police department side for well over 10 years.
In Haverhill.
And nothing is dropped. It's actually an increase because the mayor, again, everything he does, he dilutes the situation. He doesn't want to look at the whole situation. And that's the point of why we have 21 less officers on the street, which are budgeted. But there's been an increase of nearly 5 to 6% every year of residency since he's taken office. I mean, if you just look at the city budget year to year or the auditor's report, since 2006 that I could go back and look, the city has increased their property tax collection at $38 million since 2006. Now, mind you, he took office in 2004, and that was sort of the beginning of the end of the bad relationship that went on between the mayor and the fire department.
Is that true? He took office in 2004?
Yes, he took office in 2004. He sworn in 2004.
Wow. So the year we started the Valley Patriot, we're coming up on our 16th anniversary. Jim Fertit's been mayor for 16 years?
Yes, he's now been elected to his 9th term, which when he closes out will be his 18th. And it doesn't seem like he's going anywhere.
No.
So last week I went in front of the city council with my group, Citizens for Haverhill Fire. We roughly have almost 400 members on the group in less than a month that it launched on Facebook. And basically I went in front of the council saying, well, you guys are presenting this master plan and basically to start developing the city even more and more. Mm-hmm. And yet we've increased almost 3,000 units in our downtown district and we haven't increased one fire position. Since the mayor took office in 2004, when he took office, there were 69 privates on the job. There was, right then and there, that's your frontline firefighter, 69 guys.
Right.
And now it's down to 60.
So in 16 years, you've lost firefighters.
We've lost firefighters. Some of it he looked at.
But he cares about public safety.
Well, the fires,
he cares about the children.
So again, he talks about, the fires are down. Well, yeah, of course, the statistic of fires are down every year to year. It's a rarity to see what happens. But again, you can't forecast what happened in Lawrence. That was not a forecast.
Right.
And you're not going to be able to forecast it. It's funny because a year and a half ago, roughly a month after it happened, the mayor called conference and said that we were going to come up with a strategic plan in case what happened in Lawrence happened to Haverhill because
Columbia Gas, you mean?
It was sort of the same scenario, and I gently reminded him, and he looked at me kind of weird, and he said, "You're basically in his words, you're an asshole."
Right.
And I said, well,
you are an asshole. But
the
that's immaterial to the point.
But the bottom line is he lost a good deputy chief to Lawrence in Brian Moriarty.
Right.
So just the attitude that he has towards the fire department, and I think the union has been really working towards a goal of not burying the city budget. I mean, their proposal for more staffing is basically leveled to 2 guys a year for 5 years,
right,
which would bring somewhat of an adequate number to meet the complement that they would need with the strain of the resources that being put through. And it was funny because he admired Tom Menino for a long time.
Well, that makes sense.
And obviously, that Tom Menino, when he was in office, really tucked it to the firefighters himself.
Yep.
And
the cops, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Boy, did he screw the cops.
Yeah, till his kid got on the job and he tucked him in the back room in intelligence. But, I laughed about it a couple of months ago after the election. I said to the mayor, I said, isn't it funny that, after 5 years of your good buddy being out of office, that Marty Walsh had to invest $100 million in just capital expenditures in the fire department.
Right.
I said, so what do you think is going to happen when you leave office? That the next mayor, your successor, is going to walk in and have to figure out if maybe $15 million, maybe $20 million to straighten out the job.
Right. Look how long it took him to fix the mold situation at the police station.
Well, that was
like 10 years. I mean,
Tom, let's be frankly honest. He never had a structural engineer go in and actually inspect the roof after the solar panels and never had anybody overseeing the project. And it cost the city almost $250,000 after everything's said and done to repair the roof.
Right.
So now he's on this launch that he put $500,000 back in November. The city council forced his hand for $500,000 to replace the roof on Water Street. So he thinks that, we'll just invest in $500,000 is going to go away and the union's going to walk away and everybody's going to be happy and we're all going to just move along. Well, that's not the union's approach. You have apparatus your spare apparatus, which is only one legitimate truck that fits standards of the federal standard for firefighting. It should be used, and the other two are over 30 years old.
Right.
So he hasn't strategically put the chief in place to say that, hey, chief, what do we need? And again, this chief here, Chief of Liberty, is the first non-civil service chief in the department's history.
Right.
I mean, the last Chief Borden came. He unfortunately passed away before he could retire, but he was civil service, so he used to push at the mayor a little bit, but not enough. And if you noticed, back in 2011, I don't know if you followed this, but they had a matrix report done on the department, an overall study of soup to nuts, basically, in every aspect of issues with the department. And one of them was the building conditions. And in that report, it clearly stated that you guys should go out and get an engineer and do an engineering report. Fast forward 8 years, still no engineering report. We have a maintenance department of 4 guys that are overseen by the school department that operate all city buildings. And yet, you're putting these guys below livable. It's below prison conditions in at least 2 firehouses that I've seen at the apparatus floor level. I mean, never mind the fact I saw pictures presented back in November when the chief came in and did a workshop with the council a week before they voted for the $500,000. So the mayor has really tucked it to them constantly over and over again. And a lot of it has to do with, in that matrix report also they recommended a scenario if they got rid of the rescue off the front line. Well, I mean, okay, yeah, in 2011, that report said it's not recommended, but in 2012, he did it. He did it with the work of was Public Safety Commissioner and Chief Al Dinero, and they basically brought it down to one guy driving the rescue truck, which was absolutely out of control. The union fought it, couldn't win it. And 10 days after he did this, Tommy, wouldn't you know that someone was killed on Washington Street in a fire?
Wow.
So then PFFM President Ed Kelly, who's now the International Secretary General, came in front and pushed the mayor so hard to reallocate that company and put them back into service with at least 3 guys.
Is this the one on in Bradford?
No, that's the one. No, the one you're speaking of that he reopened the Bradford station. That was closed by Mayor Guerin back his first year into his only term that he ever served as mayor, because he goes down as probably one of the worst mayors Haverhill ever had.
We can't say that. He's my cousin. He was awesome,
is what they say.
Right.
I wasn't living in Haverhill then, but it's just the attitude. It's the attitude. It's these guys. The morale is low, and when you shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
So the mayor says, he says the fires are down. Okay, well, yeah, the fires are down, but once you start adding in the aspects of the buildings, now you're increasing medical calls, elevator rescues, gas smells. The Merrimack Valley in general, anybody smells a smell of gas, bang, it's a full box response.
Right.
I mean, if you ask Brian Moriarty over in Lawrence, it had to be easily from September 13th when the gas explosion happened to the end of that year. They probably saw about 800 calls for smells of gas, and not even in the affected area.
Right. And
that increased over. They did a study in Haverhill, just a small study, when the Chief of Liberty was looking at it. He said that increased by 200 calls just on gas smells. So it puts a strain on the department. And the union's been in good faith for negotiation. And, of course, Facebook, there was back and forth discussion on Facebook, and of course the mayor tries to dilute the situation as always.
Right.
You've dealt with them, I've dealt with them. You know how he is. You ask him a question and they'll, look at my rail trail.
Right. Yeah.
Or look at what I did in downtown.
I like to say you ask Jim Ferrantini what time it is, and he tells you how to build a clock.
Yeah.
But you never get an answer to your question as to what freaking time it is.
No, you're right about that, Tom. So he attributes all the good stuff that happened in downtown to him, and he pats himself on the back. Well, wait a minute. From 2011 till he retired from the State House, Brian Dempsey was the chairman of Ways and Means. You could have gotten anything out of the man.
Right.
So in 2012, he does that. Well, that's the first year that Brian's the chairman of Ways and Means. If you don't have the money to fund the fire department, which is a bunch of pucky, to be honest with you, go to Brian and say, hey, Brian, I need extra money from the state.
Right.
Or turn around and apply for a SAFER grant, which the city qualified the last 10 years for that he hasn't applied for.
Or cut some of the money, and I say this about Methuen all the time, and I get crap for it, or cut some of the money from the school department. There's so much waste in every school. I served on a school committee in Lawrence, and I worked with school committee members from other cities and towns. It's everywhere. There's so much theft and mismanagement and misspending in school departments. You could easily cut $10 million out of the Haverhill School Department budget and do it effectively, and it wouldn't affect the level of education that those kids get even one bit.
Well, you look at the school department since Jim Scully left too, and I mean it's been. They say that Dr. Murata's done miraculous things. Well, Dr. Murata basically just shuffled the bottom 10 percentile of our bad test scoring kids from the core city parts of the schools and shifted them over to the Bradford or another Bradford Elementary or Pawtucket Lake where they were scoring high to level the playing field so they could get Title I money. So the school department's getting Title I money right now.
The whole thing is such a joke, isn't it?
Okay, so we're going to get Title I money. We got free school lunch. Well, that's not a good thing to brag about because that means that 40% of your city's in poverty. Over 40%, which is 48% right now, of the city of Haverhill is in direct poverty because he dilutes the census. He dummies down the numbers. There's easily 70,000 people living in that city today. Yeah. And he keeps saying no. And it's just on and on and on how he treats things. You look at the infrastructure, you look at the buildings. We're faced with 2 new schools. It's going to cost the city $62 million in total. That's not even that's just the city's half of what Andy Vargas and Diana got to grab out of the state side. But in the meantime, we have an inadequate fire department that's not really working right.
How is Andy Vargas? Have you guys sat down with him and tried to get him to do something about this because he is your new state rep? And I know he cares a lot about illegal aliens.
I have a meeting with them tomorrow.
I know he cares a lot about citizens who are not citizens of this country. So I'm wondering if maybe he might care about citizens of this country and especially firefighters who put their lives on the line.
Andy sticks to his guns of what he got taken care of, and of course the PFFM and the local endorsed him in both his campaigns.
Well, shame on both of them.
Okay,
shame on both of them.
So they endorsed him on both campaigns, but they also endorsed Diana.
Right.
Who again, Diana doesn't really side with the mayor on anything, but from time to time she'll be seen with him discussing things.
Right.
And the mayor never brings up the fact of the inaccuracy in the fire department because he doesn't want the bad press. And let's frankly be honest, I was in front of the council last week with the Tribune in the room. HAV was, obviously Timmy Coco ran the story. But the Eagle Tribune, which is a regional paper, couldn't pick up the story to talk about my group because why? It would make the mayor look bad.
Right.
We don't want to make the mayor look bad, but unfortunately, your outlet, we don't care.
Right.
It's the bottom line is that as citizens, there's a lot of people in that city that are paying attention. He disbands a lot of things. So the other big thing that he's mad about right now is that he has to pay 100% on the cancer bill. So if a guy goes out on the job on occupational cancer, the city has to pay him 100% disability. Well,
that's awful. What the hell's wrong with him?
He forced a guy into retirement because it was costing the city too much money for the health care. And never mind that, the city has lost 8 retired members to cancer, and he won't even recognize that. Wow. You go in the city of Boston, anytime that Joe Finn gets in front of a podium and talks about someone being promoted and it's the son of or the daughter of, because that happens nowadays, of a member that passed away. The guy could die in 1983. He died of occupational cancer because Joe Finn found out that what he died of.
Right.
Or she died of, or whatever. And that's the same trend that needs to go across the fire service because unfortunately, you don't know what these guys are running into. Chief Moriarty in Lawrence is trying to do a tracker now on his guys. Mm-hmm. Chief Sheehy in Methuen's doing the same exact thing. Chief Liberty is, but we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about any bad press. Yeah. And it's unfortunate because people should be informed that this all started in 2004 when he took office. And it started off a fire that happened in the Mount Washington neighborhood. And he said, there was no loss of lives and no one was hurt. And the firefighter did get hurt. And he was misinformed by his staff because, of course, he's ignorant to not showing up.
He's not in touch.
But all of a sudden this past week, he's in touch because of the Portland Street fire, and his staff puts up a GoFundMe page, so he makes himself look like he was at the fire. Now, I was at the fire. He wasn't there.
Right.
Dan Rivera I've seen Dan Rivera, me and you both have been at fires in Lawrence, and both of us have seen him roaming around, talking to the residents. That's
usually after the Channel 5 cameras show up.
But he is still there. But, of course, they were in a battle in Lawrence with him for a long time, too, trying to get the contract straightened out, which was a shame. But here, it's very simple. They're not looking for a lot. They're not looking – they say that they want a long-term plan because you present a master plan that you want to increase population and more development, but yet – you're not increasing. You increase your police department. Yay. That took Andy Vargas when he was on the city council to push the mayor to do something. It took John Mitchison to do something.
Good guy, John Mitchison.
John Mitchison has been fighting the mayor since the day he took off.
That's the guy that should be mayor. That's the guy that should be mayor.
Unfortunately, John doesn't want that seat. He tried to run. He was unsuccessful a few times, not once but twice.
I know.
But, Dan Trokey was a great candidate. The thing about Dan Trokey is he was withheld, and the truth of the matter is he worked a lot. He worked a lot of hours, so campaigning for him for mayor was very tough for him.
Right.
I obviously was around Dan a few times. I talked to Dan. I supported Dan and voted for him.
I think his biggest problem, though, was he didn't truly, and I say this constructively, he didn't truly do his homework to understand how municipal financing, municipal government, municipal budgets work. Yes. And he didn't have a good foundational understanding of how to run a city, because if he did, I think he probably could have closed that gap.
Well, and also when he debated the mayor a week or two before the election, he got pummeled by the mayor. It was like economic development. That was the one question. He couldn't answer the question because he didn't have an answer.
Right.
And people look at that. They say, well, you want to come in here with these grand ideas, but our taxes are going to go through the roof.
Why don't you run for something?
Well, Tom, I've been toying with the fact of maybe running for council. It all depends if he runs again for mayor, because then at that point I would put my hat in against him.
He runs again. He's 185 years old. What do you mean run again? He's going to run again?
Well, it seems like his attitude is he wants to try to get his rail trail done before he leaves office, which – in hindsight,
another waste of money.
In hindsight, I live in that neighborhood, so I know exactly the development pattern. There's a big holdup. The paperboard mill property is not even remotely close to coming to development. Right. They're in legal litigation over the property themselves.
You know what you get when you spend money on rail trails? You get 10 cities. That's what you get. You get homeless people setting up 10 cities.
From the point of where it is right now, from the back of the Dunkin' Donuts on Middlesex Ave all the way up to the railroad station in the Bradford neighborhood, there has been a lot of assaults over there. There's been a lot of drug dealing. There was obviously vandalism when they knocked the bike over there. You're attracting, you want to talk about open space and recreation and all of that. You have the Buttonwood Trail. You have the stadium. He basically caters to who he wants to cater to grab the vote. Obviously, the elderly are a big vote count. But at the point, 43% of the voters that voted in this past election voted not to reelect him. He only won by 57% of the vote. That is the first time that a challenger, even Jim Rorick, couldn't do that against him.
Right.
He got 36% of that vote when they ran against each other.
There's no question that there's a groundswell in Haverhill of people who want to replace Jim Ferrantini, but they want to replace him with someone that they believe knows what they're doing. And I think his opponent in the last election kind of gave the impression that he didn't, that he was going to be on the fly, learning on the job.
Yeah, can't be like that.
It's not a job you can learn on the job. And I had several Haverhill firefighters who liked him and supported him, who said, boy, if this guy would just do his homework and learn about the budgets and learn how municipal government works, he could win. But he had no strategy plan.
Right. And that was the biggest thing is, that we had to build 2 new schools. That had to happen in the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. But never mind, put that aside. To even build a new firehouse. We haven't had a new firehouse in the city over 38 years. The last one that was built was Bradford, actually. It was rebuilt and remodeled and fixed back when he took office. Again, he fixed that. So that's his claim to fame. But in 16 years, just the atmosphere, nothing has been done. He built 1 school. And that took Tom, you probably followed that. That took an act of Congress.
Yeah, it did.
It took a lot of pushing back and forth. So at this point, if you have a chief that does whatever the mayor says because he's at the mercy of the mayor at this point, and you have a mayor that doesn't want to work with the union, and the union is being more than accommodating. All they're asking for is staffing increases. Their grand plan eventually down the road is they have a 10-year plan. And the 10-year plan is to relocate the rescue closer to the highway so they're able to respond to highway calls without the strain on the equipment. There's a lot of things that, he plays duck, duck, goose with the equipment. You can't play duck, duck, goose with fire trucks because if that fire truck breaks down on the way to a fire and we lose life, what's the city going to say then?
I know.
And we've already been through it once in 2012. It's
not good. So what is the solution? What is it that people can do to try and solve this problem? Will lobbying Jim Frontini really do any good, or do they need to go to the councils to override it?
Well, the problem is that the councils, even when I lobbied to them, and even the union has done it all through the summer and into the fall, and they pushed with the councils. It seems like you push the mayor in a corner, is what I was told by Councilor Mary Ellen Daly O'Brien last Tuesday, was you push him in a corner, he isn't going to react. Yeah. He's going to tell you to go pound sand. Yeah. Because shortly after that meeting, because I made one blanket statement, and he was watching that meeting, Tom.
I'm sure he was.
He damn was.
I'm sure he's going to watch this show. Anybody who mentions his name ever, anywhere, he knows.
The blanket statement that I made that this may be the end of the road, meaning that he may retire.
Right.
It was nothing in the disrespect that, but honestly, if you got somebody to run against this guy, they're gonna hammer him. Yeah. They're gonna hammer him, and that's embarrassing. You don't want a guy, a long-term mayor, just walk away in the sunset. Let somebody else come in. If you're gonna model yourself after Tom Menino, he's pretty much close to Tom Menino, exception of three things. One, he obviously, Tom Menino built the infrastructure and fixed the infrastructure in Boston. Two, he was able to make the neighborhoods great, and everybody worked together in unity. And three, when he left office, he left a legacy. What is the legacy of him? Downtown that Brian Dempsey helped build, and the rail trail? That's it.
Yep.
So you don't have a legacy. The legacy is amongst what you've done. Brian Dempsey's done a lot of great things for Haverhill. I actually saw him last Saturday at Joe Kennedy's event with Diana. And I was talking to Brian, and, Brian's a lot happier now, and it's good to see Brian smile.
Anybody who leaves politics is usually a lot happier.
He's a lot happier. But it's sad because Brian did so much. Yeah. He really, really did do so much. Not just
maybe he'll come back and run for mayor.
I really hope that Brian just comes out. And that was the first public appearance in a political event I've seen Brian at, too.
Well, maybe he's thinking about it.
I mean, there could be perhaps a
He'd slaughter Jim Frontini. He would slaughter Jim Frontini.
He's one of the most beloved politicians in Haverhill, and also in the Merrimack Valley, because he was great to Methuen. He was great to all the people he worked with in the delegation. I mean, Diana speaks highly of him still to this day, and it's good. But we need a change of climate. The stagnant politician. Obviously, you didn't see a turnover in the council, which was sad.
Right.
You had two great young guys there that were energetic, that had great ideas, but a lot of people don't want change.
Right. And they say they do, but at the end of the day, they don't act that way.
Yeah. I mean, of course, Nick Golden, who came pretty close to taking Bill Masick, a longtime counselor, off the seat, he didn't lose by much, but still, I mean, you need a climate change. You need, you obviously seen it, and we both of us seen it in Methuen with the change. Obviously nobody wanted Jen Kinnan in that office as voters. But Jen has done a lot of good things.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
Jen took the high road every time a police vote happened. She took the high road and ran out the door.
Yep.
And I witnessed it when I lived in Methuen, and then when I moved to Haverhill, I'm looking around, I'm like, what is this? Is this a joke? Right. There's no term limits on these people. There should be term limits. The one thing that the mayor is bringing up that should have been brought up a long time ago is district representation versus at large.
Yes, I'm way against that.
Here's the problem. Exactly, I am too, because of this issue. We can't get anybody in the general election from Mount Washington or the Acre to run.
Right.
What's to think that if we do it tomorrow that, you got to get somebody in that seat. Yep. So it's a problem. Yep. Councils at large, I mean, pretty much don't live, they don't live in one corner of the city like Lowell does. Right. I mean, their at-large councils pretty much live in one corner.
Right.
Where Haverhill has a spread of a few here, a few there, which isn't bad, but we got to keep the movement. I think with the new council president in place, things will kind of work. But again, I don't know how strong Melinda's going to be on her feet with the mayor right now.
We've got to wrap up. Do you want to give just a minute wrap up on all this?
So,
what do you want people to know? What do you want people to come away from the show knowing and remembering?
Well, I want people to remember that our firefighters are not being fairly treated. I mean, it's just evident. I don't want people to read into the perception of what the mayor puts out, because I think when he puts out that he says he has a vehicle replacement plan with the chief, then why isn't that public record?
Right.
Why can't I review it? Obviously, that's a big issue. His capital improvements plan is very well off the charts because he says 110 million invested. Well, what are you investing 110 million in? Give us the breakdown. What are you doing?
Right.
We know that 62 million of it's going to the schools because it's in writing. Right. But other than that,
anytime you want to get a public document and he doesn't think it is a public document, let me know. I will file an official public records request. And I work very closely with the Secretary of State's office for communities that refuse to turn over documents that they always say aren't public, but really are. They just don't want to give them out. And we will help you get those documents any way that we can.
But the group is doing well. It's Citizens for Haverhill Fire on Facebook. Just any support we can give. We're kind of doing a few different multifaceted things. Other than fighting the mayor, we're also doing firefighter appreciation, stuff like that. We're going to have an event at Battlegrounds soon, working with Sal and Dana at Battlegrounds Coffee in downtown to do some events to appreciate.
Make sure you tell them I said hi. I don't think they're big fans.
But to give the firefighters some appreciation, because I think the citizens really don't know how hard they work.
I agree. All right. Steve Costa, thank you for coming in. Haverhill firefighter. Love to have you back again. Please consider running for office. Haverhill needs people like you. Every community needs people like you. People that are out there, they're outspoken, and they don't care who they piss off. I want to thank McLennan Real Estate, Century 21, Janet McLennan, my future wife. I am going to marry her. I know I have a 34-year-old cutoff. 34 years old is my cutoff, but I may have to break it for her. AFC Urgent Care, Lisa Williams and her husband do a lot of great stuff for the community. Maku Towing, Marsan and Son Construction, the Methuen Police Superior Officers Union, Climate Designs, Nina at Climate Design Systems. We have 2 more sponsors coming on board in February. Horizon Home Care. I want to thank Karen Ferrillo, who's going to be coming on board. And Borelli's Deli for the first time in 15 years. We got Don Smirglio. Nice. So I was in there buying meats the other day, and he said he wants to come on board. Steve Costa, thank you for coming in. Ed Sullivan, thank you for being our fine producer. Sounds like Melvin Taylor says we've got to go home, so go home already. Political TNT at 4 o'clock.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.